Hello everyone and welcome to yet another Masterclass Monday. So today's topic is one that was requested by a member of our youth board of directors, and it's all about learning lines. So learning lines is one of those things in the world of theatre that people at all levels of skill and profession can struggle with. It's also one of those things where some people just naturally pick up their lines and others struggle a huge amount, and I'm one of those people. So with this in mind, if you are one of those people who struggle, here are some top tips to help you get those lines into your head. Before I begin though, it is worth remembering that for line learning in particular, there is no one size fits all. So something that works for one person may not work for another. So I recommend trying a whole range of techniques and just figuring out what works best for you. Now, this one is not a technique, but instead I suppose it's an unpleasant truth. Line learning is boring. It's mind-numbingly boring. It is one of the few parts of the acting profession I think that truly feels like a job. It's boring but necessary, and if you're serious about doing a good job with the role you've been given, you'll get on and do it, because the job is not going to go away and it will only get harder as time goes on. You know, I'm one of those people who enjoys theatre because I dislike sitting still, and so for me it was always incredibly helpful to kind of block out specific time in my working day, something like an hour in the evening, with a specific goal of where I wanted to be at the end of it. So make yourself a schedule and stick to it. Now, some directors have their own feelings about when they would like actors to know a script. I personally like to learn as much as possible ahead of the first rehearsal, though certainly there is no obligation for anyone to do that. But I would recommend, once you've started rehearsals, get learning straight away. It means that you can be learning the script in much smaller chunks, as opposed to trying to learn a whole act in 3 days or something like that. Also, I find it incredibly helpful to set a clear deadline that all my lines must be learnt by, and this helps break down what I need to have learnt by the end of each day, or sort of the end of each rehearsal. So this is one of the most effective techniques that I ever used. It was great for me, and in particular it's great for use when you are first starting with your script and you may not be in a position where you know it well enough to run lines with a partner yet. So what you're going to do is you're going to take it a page at a time. You're going to start at the top of the page, trace down to where your first line is. You're going to read your first line aloud, cover it up, and say it from memory. Check if you were right, and if you were, you're going to add on the next line you have on the page. So this time you'll read your first line, then your second line aloud, cover them up, and try and do them both from memory in sequence. And so you've got to keep adding more lines onto that sequence as opposed to just moving on to the next line, as it will help lock in those lines nearer the top sort of early on. And so keep on adding until you're able to say the whole page from memory, and do not move on until you are able to say all of the lines from the page in sequence from memory 3 times in a row without any mistakes. This one's fairly self-explanatory. Ply a friend, a partner, a fellow actor, or anybody with biscuits and ask them to sit down and run lines with you. I would make sure that they have the time and the attention able to give to you for this as well, as 10 minutes of line runs, whether answering their phone or texting or anything like that, would be less than useful to you. I've also found it very helpful to set a scale of how mean they should be, which is to say how much paraphrasing should they let you get away with. As you get closer to the show, you should be aiming for word perfect, but when you're first starting out, it can lessen feelings of frustration, I think, and also help you get a feel for the structure of the scene if they're letting you get away with some small mistakes. If you don't have any friends or colleagues available, then an app like Line Learner, there's a link in the post, can be incredibly useful. Also, I would recommend, once you're getting confident with your lines, run them with your partner in different ways, because sometimes we think we have the lines locked in, but what we actually have is a very specific delivery locked in, or the cueing, which makes us incredibly unflexible on stage or in rehearsal if we want to change something or try something new. So this is a very quick method that can be helpful to lock in a difficult line, or particularly if you have a very large amount of lines, is attach your line to a piece of blocking in the rehearsal room. So for example, adjusting your coat, checking your watch, taking off your hat, and this can really help ground your line into your mind by adding a physical reminder to it. That said, make sure that whatever movement you attach to it is moment appropriate, and if anything as well, director approved. So listening to a recording of a scene over and over again can be incredibly helpful, and it's really helpful for you learning those tricky cues as well as your own lines. Almost every phone has an audio recorder these days, and listening to your scenes can be incredibly helpful. I strongly recommend asking a fellow actor or your director to record your scene as is performed, as this will help map out the show in your mind, as well as sort of just helping you learn your own lines and what you do in that scene. So this can be particularly useful when working with a large speech. And to be honest, it's some text work that you should be doing anyway as an actor. But having mapped the thoughts out in your lines will give you a logical path to mentally follow, which will handily hint to you what lines will be coming next. You're going on a clear mental journey as opposed to just having to pluck lines from your memory. So make like a misbehaving child and write those lines out again and again and again and again and again. This one is very, very similar to covering up the lines, but this time I'd recommend writing them down. Some people just helps them remember that better. It can be really difficult to learn lines when it doesn't seem to be going in, especially if others around you seem to be picking them up easily. But the important thing to remember is you won't get them word perfect on day one, but if you're being disciplined, if you're practicing, then that is all you can ask of yourself right then. Do your best and trust that they will come, as getting frustrated and up in your own head will make the job of learning lines next to impossible, whilst also making you unhappy. So these have been some tips or tricks and general advice for learning lines. If you have any suggestions of your own, it'd be great to hear them down below. If you have any suggestions for anything else you'd like us to cover in a masterclass, do fire away down in the comments below. And as always, stay safe, stay positive, and we'll see you soon.